This video is going to go through the exact process that I had to take in order to get to 7 figures in commercial real estate. So this presentation is to a group of people that are currently in residential real estate, have maybe done a few commercial deals, but incredibly interested in the commercial side of the business and leveling up their income. And this is really a presentation that I haven't given anywhere else. It was specifically to this group of people. We have a coaching and training company that charges a lot of money to teach things like this, but you get it on this presentation absolutely free. So if you're looking to get into commercial real estate and then go and scale to 7 figures, enjoy the video.
You're going to learn 4 things, and that's the overview of the commercial real estate industry, the 4 main property types in commercial real estate, how to value commercial real estate property, and then also what it takes to make multiple 6 figures in this business. So we want to show you kind of like the foundation and the framework of like what that process looks like. Let's play a game of true or false. I need some participation here, so I'm counting on you guys. So you must have a commercial certification for your license to sell commercial properties. Easy. A 5-unit apartment complex is considered commercial real estate. You guys are going to teach the class? So open houses for commercial are normally always on Saturday, never on a Sunday. I didn't think through whether it's true or false, but I guess it would be false because we don't work on weekends. So yeah, that's part of the commercial real estate game. Is I'll talk about some of the differences of the industry itself and timing, but I've never been required to work a weekend in my life, and it is really great because, like I said, I'm a family man. I have small kids. I want to spend the weekends with them. So there are 35 times more residential realtors than commercial realtors. True? That's false. There's 52 times. All right. And then you will want to sell commercial real estate after this training. Hopefully that's true. What kind of properties are we selling? So when I started, I told you that, hey, it's simply like you're in the same industry, but you're selling a new product. So there's 4 main property types, which I'm going to get into each and every one of them in depth. An easy acronym to remember is ROMI. It's retail, office, multifamily, industrial. And then there's like commercial land, which is, land can be anything if you change the zoning really. So, but the 4 main property types for existing structures, ROMI is a good acronym to use. Who are the buyers and sellers? So this is one difference about commercial real estate is that it is really only businesses and investors only. Because if you're investing in commercial real estate, usually it's a full-time gig. You know, to be in the realm, and you know, on the properties on the small side are $500,000-$700,000, which is about the smallest like investors deal with. Usually, if you have more than one of those, then you're probably considered like a full-time investor and you have the means where you're not working an hourly job like at Starbucks or something. And then the biggest differences between residential and commercial real estate. So as I mentioned before, like the schedule and also the timing of deals. And this is a common misconception we get on commercial real estate is like, oh, the deals take forever. You know, the deals take 6 months, 9 months, 12 months. How would I ever get into that? I can't wait 12 months for a paycheck. Our deals, the average they close is about 60 days. I mainly do warehousing and industrial properties, and probably 90% of our deals are existing structures. So the one exception to the timing of deals, like I said, they usually fall about 45 days to 75 days to get them closed. The one exception to those deals is going to be commercial land. Because in commercial land, people are normally buying it to turn it into something else, which means there is a lot more steps they have to go through in order to like make that dream come a reality. And then also emotional buyers and sellers. So these are simply things that I hear over and over again of like, hey, why are you considering commercial real estate? And this is a big one. And, you know, I think we've all dealt with people that are, you know, very emotional about a deal, about a transaction. And, you know, I mean, I think we know like the root cause for that. It's normally because when somebody sells a home or so, you know, buying or selling a home, that's where their family lives. That's where they grew up. That's where, you know, their grandparents live, or their dog died and is buried in the backyard, or they love the neighborhood or whatever it is. So there's all these big, strong emotional ties to it versus the commercial real estate side of the business. It's really just business. For businesses, it's like, hey, does this location work? Like, does this building work? Does it have the right power or clear heights? Can I get to I-4? Can I get to 98? Can I get here? And then for investors, it's really just like, hey, do the numbers work? If the numbers work, then great, we'll do the deal. But if not, then something needs to change. We either change the sale price, If they'll accept that, then great. If not, we just move on. I want to dig into each of the property types because, as I said, like, in this industry, it's simply like you selling a new product. So one of the main things you want to understand is like, what is the product you're selling? And I thought this was the best way to give like a general overview of each of the product types. There's many different types of retail. Single tenant and multi-tenant is really the way that the buildings are broken down. So we have like restaurants, department stores, dollar stores. I mean, you see everything, and we all shop at these retail centers, gas stations, hair salons. All of these things are considered to be retail real estate. People are doing retail products and services. We've seen this product type transition, and all of you have, over the last 5 to 10 years as e-commerce has become a big thing. So what we see with most buyers, investors, tenants is that they're looking for more e-commerce resistant tenants. And that's going to be like your hair salons, coffee shops, your restaurants, things like that you can't buy on Amazon. So to get into office buildings, once again, there's single tenant and multi-tenant. And this picture's a little like deceiving because like this can be a multi-tenant building if there's just like 3 tenants in it, So while these big, massive skyrise would be considered multi-tenant office buildings, there's much smaller properties that are like, if this was LAR upstairs and then it was chiropractor downstairs, this would be a multi-tenant office building. So they don't all look like this. And these are some of the common businesses that we see in office space. And I was actually like writing this out. You write out like everybody that can like be in an office space, and it's like, I can be here forever because like any type of business, no matter what it is, like we're doing computer work. And so it's like, I like to sum it up of like anybody that's doing computer office administrative type work can use an office space. What makes them attractive? So I said I wanted to touch on this because it's different properties, it's different properties need different demographics, and the people in proximity, like it's important for different reasons. So I use this term for office and also industrial is the employable workforce. So that's one thing, like retail, it's like, hey, we're looking at the population and how much money they make, how much they can spend. But with office buildings and also like the big, large scale industrial buildings, that are going to go hire 1,000 people, you're looking at demographics because you want to make sure that you have an employable workforce. So while places like, we've all seen the big box industrial properties blow up all over Lakeland. And we know the reason is because Lakeland is centrally located. You can get on a truck, go 5 hours any direction, and you can get pretty far. And then that same truck driver can be back home in 5 hours. But also one of the reasons why is we have a lot of working and able bodies. So we have a very strong employable workforce. So if you look at places and locations like Ocala is starting to boom with industrial properties, but you go even slightly further than that, you think of places like the Villages would be incredible from a location standpoint, but you have nobody to hire. Like there's nobody to go in and like lift boxes and run forklifts and all of that. Like it's a retirement community. So the employable workforce or the people in proximity to those properties, like it just doesn't make sense. So that's very important. And that's where like median age steps in. What we look at is like, hey, we're going to need to hire 150 people. And the median age, it's like, if it's like 62, 58, you're just like, it's more like retirement age, like probably not the best. But I think Lakeland, our MSA has like a median age of like 39.4 or something. So, and we have a lot of people. So it's a very strong employable workforce. Multifamily. And as we said, this is anything more than 4 units. And also, once again, kind of a drastic example here. This is a big, like, that looks bigger than 300 units too. But that's the big, like 300 plus unit apartment complex that we've also seen go up everywhere. It's everything in between this even can be considered like commercial real estate. So there's a lot of, 5, 10, 25, 30 units in the commercial real estate sector, which honestly is, if you were thinking about starting to do commercial deals more consistently, like this is where some of our members start, like because they already have they have investors that are looking for like single families, duplexes, triplexes, etc. So to step up to like 10 units instead of 2 or 3, it's more of a natural transition. And also like, I don't know, it just kind of works a little bit easier with your brain too. Like if you go from single family to a triplex, it's like, hey, now you got 3 and you have the expenses as a whole and the 3 tenants. But to do that again, to go from 10, 15, 20, it's a little bit more natural of a transition and just kind of works like from a learning curve a little bit better. So multifamily is special because all of these property types, retail, office, and industrial, they can be sold to investors or what we call users. So if I own a industrial building and there's an HVAC company that is expanding and they want to grow into our market, they can buy the building from me if I want to sell it, and they can operate their business out of it. That's a user, owner user. And then obviously if I own the industrial building and I'm like, hey, I don't want to sell it, I just want to lease it, then obviously I'm the investor. With all those three types of real estate, that stays the same. Like there's owner users and there's investors. But in multifamily, there's really never like owner users. Like you don't see, somebody going to buy like a 300 unit apartment complex for like $50 million and like, hey, I want to live in one of the units. Going to industrial next. So this has been my bread and butter. As I said, I specialize in industrial real estate. It's here in Central Florida. It makes a lot of sense too. This is one thing, not only I specialized because of like, hey, it's really good in our market, but these are just the people that I probably mesh the best with. I liked industrial because a lot of those guys are just like blue collar, hardworking guys. They really don't care what it looks like. They don't care what color it is, if it's rusty, if it's ugly. They really don't care. They say, hey, as long as we can operate our business out of it, it works. So they're the least picky of what I've thought. But I mean, there's awesome people in all these property types. But you'll kind of notice like different flow of people for each one. The different types of industrial properties. So obviously I said before, single tenant and multi-tenant, simple. And then we have more business park styles. Yeah, so you can see that top right photo. It's more of like a business park. Then also big box, which I mentioned before. That's what you're going to see is like your big, I don't want to say just e-commerce because there's a lot of other businesses that go into these big box industrial facilities, but the majority of the 300, 500, 700,000, million square foot facilities that we've seen in our market, they're going to be, coming in more of these big box type facilities. And then also heavy industrial properties, which this is kind of like a little bit like a, answer D, all of the above. So like the properties that, like power plants would be in here, like refineries, canning, manufacturing is most of the time in heavy industrial. So that's kind of like a catch-all. And it's a great sector and we still do a lot of business in that sector, but that's just one you have to be more careful with from an environmental standpoint. If you get into these big, you walk into like this facility and it's like, hey, you got, 4 concrete walls and a bunch of doors, but you walk into this and you're like, what in the heck is going on there? So like, you're probably not going to know what's going on at that plant. I would say you're never expected to really as well. If it's a very like high tech or complex operation, you're not really expected to be an expert in their industry. And you can always like rely on like a plant manager or somebody there to like kind of coach you up on, what's going on. Where's the smoke coming from? Is that okay? Same thing. Hey, what makes this attractive? Like I said, different things for each property types. So for industrial, ceiling heights, power, 3-phase power, usually it's going to be single phase or 3-phase power. 3-phase is the heavier industrial guys that are pulling more power. They're going to need 3-phase, which is most of them. Then loading, dock high, ground level, or loading well. There's also like a mixed loading, but ground high or ground level is the ground. Dock high is going to be like what a semi truck can back up to. So like a 53 footer, usually it's about 4 feet off the ground. So these docks are usually going to be about 4 feet up, and that's called like a dock high facility. And then also like a loading well. So loading wells come in it's like, hey, I'm going to be pulling in a bunch of trucks here. Like I need dock high, but the building is on the ground. So what they do is they dig a ramp into the ground and they can back the truck up. That's called a loading well. And it's a well because, as you can imagine, it fills up with water. So what it takes to make multiple 6 figures. And originally this presentation was titled Top Producer. And it's like, hey, what it takes to be a top producer in commercial real estate. And I didn't want to be misleading because, you have to make multiple 6 figures before you become a top producer. And like really what we classify that as in commercial real estate and just kind of like the income brackets here is mediocre commercial brokers. Usually make 150 to 350 grand, depending on what market you're in. But if you're average, you show up to work every day and you do a decent job, that's roughly the range that we see folks make. And then top producers, 500K to $1.5 million plus. There's always going to be, people that achieve, greatly more than that. There's some people that are, really, really good out there and have been doing this for a very long time and make multiple millions of dollars per year. You're in a good market, and I'd even say like a decent market. If you're in a decent market and you're good at what you do and you like Wake up, you show up, you call people back, you have a database, you contact property owners, you do a good job for people. Like, to get into the 500K, $1 million range, I don't want to say it's not that hard, but I want to say it's very attainable if you're doing a good job and you're located in a good market. And that's one of the things that we see over and over again about commercial and residential real estate is, I ask people how much they want to make. And they say like, oh, I want to make $500,000. And I say, okay, like, what's your average commission size? And they'll tell me like from, $5 to $10,000. And then I'll say like, okay, so like, how many deals are you ready to do to make $500,000 a year to make your cap on your annual take home? Like, hey, how many deals like do you have the bandwidth to do? Because even if you can, say go make $500,000, like, okay, how many people do you have to hire to be selling 100 homes? So like, that's all part of the equation. Versus the commercial real estate side of the business, people don't talk numbers. Normally, I like to talk numbers just because I'm an open book, but we did about 1.4 million last year. I did personally in gross commissions, and that was on like 27 deals. So that's just kind of how it breaks down. And as far as like a moving and shaking throughout the month, like, I didn't want to be doing 7 transactions a month, 5 transactions, 10 transactions a month. That sounds like a nightmare to me. But to do 1 or 2, maybe 3, I would say is a really good month. And it just makes for a little bit better headspace. Like I said, you might have to do a little more work, think a little bit deeper about those 1 or 2 transactions you're working on. But usually there's an additional 0 on the end of your commission check, which is nice. 3 steps to get into commercial real estate. And here's more of like, hey, the how-to in the business of like what you need to get started and actually do commercial deals. So what we call is the foundational ability. And this is really going to be the knowledge of the industry, the properties, and your market. So knowing these 3 things, that is why we call it the foundational ability, because before you know this, like, you can't really operate in anything else. So you have to know what you're doing. As far as the industry goes, you have to know the properties and how they operate, how to sell them, the product, and then also the market that you're in. So people are using you and your service because you are providing them value, and, you knowing the market and like, where rates are at, where rents are at, where sale prices are at, if this is a good deal, if this is a bad deal. Same thing that's in residential real estate, but just like I said, on a different scale. So brokerage infrastructure, these are some of the things that we like to see and we help our members go and do, is we help them build a property database. And this is big, especially if you're going to go after listings and going after like on the sell side of like representing property owners and selling properties. You want to have a database. So that is usually 300 to 500 plus properties in a database that you have property information, then also like owner names, phone numbers, emails. And once again, there's a few different ways to do that. We teach, multiples of the ways to do that. But that's one thing we help our members do with our system, is build that database, because once you have that, that is like, hey, the properties that you're going after, and then the efforts to get there, it always looks different. So like how people do business development, there's of course the cold calling, and you can try and set up more warm calls, direct mail, or door knocking. There's all these things to do to get business. But as far as like knowing, like, you have to know what the target is. And usually the targets are like on that database. You don't need like $500 worth of software or to go sign up on like some big new fancy CRM. And not to go too off tangent, but that's another thing. People are always like, I need this new CRM. Like, I need this new CRM and this like pipeline manager and like this fancy database. And that is what's going to make me so much money next year. That's what's going to, it's like, no, if you had an Excel spreadsheet and you did what you're supposed to do, you would go make $500,000 or $1 million plus. But the actually putting in the work and doing what you're supposed to do, that's the uncomfortable part. Everybody wants to buy the magic pill, but that's with everything that we have, is weight loss, income, et cetera, the whole 9. But the basics, that's really what we focus on, is the basics of commercial real estate and doing those things well. Having a plan, this, kind of sounds corny, but as I just mentioned, a lot of it is just execution, knowing what to do, how to do it, and then executing on the plan. That's what we tell people all the time. It's like, hey, we can, tee you up and put you in the best position possible, give you the tools, the training, the resources, everything. But if you don't execute, like, you won't make any money, and we can't help you. So execution is probably the biggest part of it all. And then business development. So there's multiple ways to do business development. When going through a property database, like I said, that's if you're wanting to represent more sellers. I'll say that business development looks different for whatever you're trying to do. So if you are working sellers and you are trying to go get listings, yes, a property database of the inventory of your market and contacting those property owners regularly, building relationships with them is the best way to do those type of deals. If you're on the buyer side and you're working with, say, 2 or 3 investment groups, hey, what type of properties are they going after? It looks different of like that angle of, helping people buy properties. How you're going to do business development just looks different. And then same thing for like landlord and tenant representation. If you're working with a dentist office and he wants to open 10 locations in Central Florida in the next 24 months, how you're going to database, how you're going to find properties is just going to look different. So there's multiple angles for the different ways that you do business development, but those are kind of the main ways of like how people make money in this business, most of which is on the buy and sell side, which that is more like what we lean towards. I always say that if you're going to work on the buy and sell side for commercial real estate, I say that the sweet spot is about $3 to $12 million bucks. And the reason for that is there's usually still very healthy commissions in those ranges, and there's a higher velocity of properties that are selling in that range. So like some people think like, hey, I want to go do like the $50 million deal and I'm just going to make like 6% and I'm going to go, sit on a beach somewhere and I'm going to make $3 million bucks and never talk to anybody again. That's not how it works. But seriously, people have that thought. They're like, I'm going to make like 4% on 20 million, 30, 100 million. And like, I'm going to retire. It's like, okay, let me know how it works. That's the range that I say is like, hey, you can still, there's very healthy commissions in that range and there's a lot of velocity. So there's more 3, 4, 5, $6 million properties trading than there are 20, 30, 40 million. Also with the competition, it's like if you deal in 20, 30, 50 million bucks, you are going to invite more of the corporate level brokerages where it's going to be like nationally, like publicly traded companies. There's a team of 15 peoples. They all have MBA after their name. That's going to be more of like the competition in those sectors. And they'll also do it, like they'll charge a lot less commission because they do the financing, they do the property management, they do the debt placement, they do all of these things to make money. So just not a very lucrative route. 3 to 12 million is where I would hang out. And that's where we do. And then, like I said before, it's like, hey, consistency is the biggest thing. And, when getting into commercial real estate, like I said, not to go on like, hey, be that guy of like hard work, discipline. But I want to put discipline in consistency because it does these things like, you having a plan and having that set up and like, it's same thing with like making more money or weight loss or whatever it is. Like if you have a plan and you're like, hey, I'm going to go crush this plan for like 2 weeks or even 3 weeks or a month, and then we fall off the train. That's just like that's what we do. Like, and I don't know what it is that gets us off that, probably because it's difficult. And if it was easy, everybody would do it. But the consistency to have a plan is, that's what we see is very big, and being disciplined in that. And that's one of the things we do is like, we have the accountability and the support and all of those things with our program. So whether it's with us, whether it's with somebody else, if you have a partner and friend, a buddy that you say, hey, let's get into commercial real estate together, you can hold each other accountable, whatever it is, because it does take like, you need to put in months and months and months. And like, in order to get to the $500,000-$600,000 million, like, hey, you're looking at like, let's put in 1, 2, 3 years worth of work. And then you can make multiple 6 figures, even 7. You can delegate and scale and work 7 to 10 hours in the business, etc. So it's a really great industry and I absolutely love what I do every single day. Yeah, that's about all I got. So